Big Ten today. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday. Dave Revson, Dave Wannstedt, Joshua Perry. The speculation is open. It's award season.
It's award season. And you know what? And I know we're not going to get into the awards right now, but award in my mind, looking at this whole Big Ten for the year, Penn State deserves an award. I mean, really, look at James Franklin and the job that they have done, coaches and players, to put themselves in position where they are because when you talk Ohio State, when you talk Michigan, whoever, the best quality win that everybody refers to, Penn State. So that's my initial thought on the show today.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Penn State fans are going to be excited about what their future looks like because they got some young players that are going to be ready to roll. As I get into my thoughts about awards season, I always reflect back on my time as a player, and I played with and against some phenomenal players here in the Big Ten, and now as an analyst, I get to watch some really good guys play here. So there'll be some guys who don't make some of these lists, or there'll be some conversations about who could have won the big awards, and I think that really speaks to the quality of player that exists here and the way that they play the football game, and the quality of coaches, too, in developing some of these players.
All Big Ten defensive teams plus some individual awards today. We'll get to the offensive All Big Ten teams and some more individual awards tomorrow, but you were mentioning the Coach of the Year. Let's start there. It is today's big story, and we start with that surprise. I don't think there is any surprise after what we saw Saturday. Michigan's Jim Harbaugh takes the award, winning the votes of both the media and his fellow coaches. After ending a 16-year title drought last year and making the CFP, Harbaugh's team even better this regular season. Undefeated, one victory away from capturing back-to-back outright conference crowns for the first time in 30 years. This is the first time Michigan's been 12-0 since its most recent national championship team in 1997. 12 wins for the second straight year. They had one 12-win season in the prior 115 years and two all-time before last season. And, of course, they're in the title game for the second straight year after topping Ohio State on Saturday. This is a man you know very well. Coach, you coached him in the NFL. This is a well-deserved award.
Absolutely. What's that Frank Sinatra song? I did it my way.
Certainly has done it his way.
And he has done it his way. That's, I was laying there last night thinking about the show today, saying, how would I describe Jim, right, winning this award? And he did. And we talked about how he made some adjustments offensively. It wasn't just two tight ends and a fullback every play. He's opened it up, but he's still, at the end of the day, when you say Michigan on offense, they run the ball, and they are committed to being physical, and that's Jim Harbaugh to the T. And when you think back a year ago, all the changes and everything that he's put up, when you make a quarterback change at midstream, can that affect the play on the field? Absolutely. But the hidden thing in that change that Jim did when he went from Cade, and Cade got hurt, to JJ, that can divide the locker room. And all it takes is a little bit, and you know this better than anybody, Joshua, a little bit of, we call it friendly fire in the locker room. Why is he playing? Why isn't he playing? And you lose a game. You're not going to lose the whole season, but you lose a game or two, and you don't. That never happened. Boy, great job by Jim and everybody involved there, really.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think about this thing globally, too, just for the story arc of this past year. Like, you're coming off of one of the best seasons that you've had in recent history in 2021. You win a Big Ten championship. You make it to the college football playoff. Then in the offseason, Jim Harbaugh is looking at NFL jobs, and he has to address his team coming back and tell them about the situation, but also express the fact that he loves Michigan, which everybody knows, and that he wants to coach those guys. And he won that locker room. There was no question about whether those guys wanted to play for him because of the way that they played this fall. And you mentioned the quarterback controversy, and that is a very difficult thing to navigate through. And I think he did a really good job of that. How about two new offensive coordinators, Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss, and getting those guys up to speed? And the way that their offense has played this year has been great. But then you have to replace the defensive coordinator. And that Jesse Minter has done a great job, but that was a hard thing to do for Jim Harbaugh because he did it the year before. So when you really start to look at all of the pieces that went into this, there was no question to me about who the coach of the year in this conference was.
It's remarkable. I mean, you talk about the defense alone, right? Not only do you have a new coordinator, but they had 4 starters back. Yeah. I mean, you're replacing 2 dominant ends who everyone pointed to as, well, what's different about Michigan this year when we were talking about the success they were having a season ago?
Sure.
Well, it's those ends. It's the fact you got a scheme for them. It's how dominant they are. You lose both of them.
Yep.
They are a better scoring defense this year than they were a year ago. They're third in the nation. They were eighth last year. It's incredible.
And Jim Harbaugh does things like taking a wide receiver and switching him to a slot corner. And that guy is one of the best players on their defense. Like that right there, to me, that's everything that you need to know.
May have made the play that saved the game.
Absolutely did.
Yeah, huge play in the end zone, Mike Sanders still.
Yep.
Let's dive into the All Big Ten defense. These are the first team players. There's a coach's team and a media team, as you're probably aware. You see 8 players were first team in both. Johnny Newton, huge force up front for the dominant Illini D. Mike Morris and Mozzie Smith from the Wolverines. Second leading tackler in the league, Jack Campbell. Nick Herbig, the leader in sacks and tackles for loss. Tommy Eichenberg. Devin Witherspoon, one of the leaders of a secondary that topped the nation in pass efficiency D. And Joey Porter Jr., who tied for third in the league with 11 passes broken up. In all, 14 players named to at least one of the first teams. More awards coming later. Let's dive into the champ game, though. Purdue and Michigan, Saturday night in Indy. First time these two have gotten together in 5 years. Purdue will look to become the first West team to win the game in the current format. Jeff Brom, of course, has been a giant killer at his time in West Lafayette, a perfect 3-0 against top 5 teams. That is really remarkable. When you break these teams down, put them up against one another, what stands out in the matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all believe that Michigan has the clear advantage in this one, especially what they did against Ohio State this past week. I think it cemented to us that this is a team that can really challenge for a national title. But as you start to dig into the X's and O's of that game, I think they have a great opportunity. And a couple weeks ago, J.J. McCarthy said there was a lot of meat left on the bone that was ready to take it off. And I think it's still there. Because there were some more opportunities in the pass game, he was still only 50%, even though he hit some big passes. In the run game, they had the 2 long runs, but there were other opportunities to break through that they didn't quite get. So for Michigan, I think that they have a wonderful opportunity to impress upon their team that there's still another level to get to as well as they're playing. But Purdue, for me, is one of those that's really tricky because we talk about at their top end what they can do with their aggression, both offensively and defensively, what they can do with their packet of gadget plays on offense that can really keep a defense on their heels and make them second guess early. They're going to need the top end version of their team to be competitive in this game. But if there's one that I would have said out of any of the teams in the West that would be a bad matchup, it's Purdue because of how they can come out and surprise you when they're playing great teams.
Yeah, and you know, from a coach's perspective, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm Jim or if I'm Ryan and I'm thinking of this game, okay, if we play Illinois, we know pretty much what we get, right? Kind of what you're saying. If we're playing Iowa, we know pretty much the worst matchup. If I'm a head coach, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, the worst team to play because of the uncertainty would be a Purdue. I think 2 things have to happen for Purdue in this game. Number 1, they got to take this game to the 4th quarter. You've got to get into a game like this when you're the underdog and you're playing a better opponent, a more talented opponent. I used to always preach, if we can just get this game to the 4th quarter, hey, now all of a sudden you talk about who's the pressure on then.
Right.
You take this game to the 4th quarter, and Michigan right now is going to be pressing. I mean, they know what's at stake. Okay, the second thing is Aiden O'Connell must not turn the ball over. You know, no turnovers, they're going to win the game. Or not win this game. That's been their history. So to me, that's a real key. And whether it's get the ball to the running back Devin Mockabee running the ball. He had almost 100 yards last week. He had almost 60 yards receiving. He's got to be a big part of it because that's high percentage things that takes pressure off your quarterback. So that's how I would look at this if I'm Michigan and I'm getting ready to defend this team. On the other side, Jeff Brom, don't turn the ball over, get it to the 4th quarter, and you will have a chance because now the pendulum switches as far as who's under the gun.
It is interesting, too, to think about it in terms of what's at stake for Michigan. I think there's a lot less at stake than there was in the championship game a year ago. They knew that even though they had climbed that mountain and beaten Ohio State, that in order to stay at the top and get into the playoff, they had to get a win over Iowa. I'm not convinced they need to win this game. I think they're in the playoff no matter what happens. I'd say the same thing about Georgia. And so you do wonder a little bit whether in the back of your mind there might be just a modicum of complacency?
It's funny when you talk about this complacency thing, because I was spending time with Jake Butt talking about the moments that happened in Columbus and then what it means in terms of the aftermath. And in what I had said to him is, in the locker room where you get the emotional win, that's kind of a program definer. The emotions can lie to you. They can overtake your rationale, and then you start to read the tweets and everything else. And so that's something that creeps in. And I think this is an opportunity for the Michigan coaching staff to really be hard on players, because it's easy to be hard on your players after you just had a huge victory, and they understand why you're doing it. I have no doubt that they're going to be up for this game. That would be totally uncharacteristic for this Michigan football team, who's shown a head coach that is a grinder and is hyper-focused on everything he wants to do, in a locker room who's been extremely mature this year and handled business for the most part the way that they're supposed to. I'd be absolutely shocked if they were complacent at all in this game.
I think it's to Michigan's advantage that they're playing on 1 week time. When you have a huge win like this and you're ranked high, and whether they're 1 or 2 coming out, in the new college football playoff thing, all of a sudden, if you have a month to prepare, and I've played at these national championship games where we had a month, boy, a lot of things can happen with your players.
Yeah.
A lot of things mentally, and your coaches, and your assistant coaches. Everybody wants that next job. All those where. I'm glad it's 1 week. I think Jim's going to have a chance to get their attention, and pretty soon they're going to be down in Indy, and it's going to be kickoff, get the ball in the air.
And again, I think all he has to do is remind them of Purdue's recent history and long-term history for them to understand. I mean, we mentioned Jeff Brom, the 3 wins over the AP top 5. They have 17 wins all time as an unranked team against top 5 teams in most of any program in the country.
Your attention.
It's really remarkable. Michigan's Mike Morris is the Smith-Brown Defensive Lineman of the Year, named for Bubba Smith and Courtney Brown. He's the second Wolverine in a row to win this award. Aiden Hutchinson captured it last year. Prior to that, Michigan hadn't had a winner since 2006 with Lamar Woodley. Morris, one of the key cogs for a unit that is second in the nation in total D. And Mike Morris is joining us right now. And Mike, you are literally smiling ear to ear. You were when we talked down the line in the break as well. I've got to think it's good to be Mike Morris right now.
Man, praise be to the Most High God, man. I'm just so thankful for this opportunity, so thankful for this moment, man. Dave just called me and was like, "Oh, Mike, we have something for the Big Ten. Just come, da-da-da-da." And then today, earlier, he's like, "Oh, you have an award." And I'm like, all right. I'm glad I got changed, because I was in some bummy clothes. So I'm just speechless about this moment, man.
Well, we are really happy for you. It is a huge award. And it's interesting, I mentioned there in the introduction that Aiden had won it last year, and we were talking a bit about the achievements of this team a few minutes ago, and the fact that there were a lot of people doubting this defense because you had lost Aiden, you had lost David Ojabo. And so to have won this award, how much pressure did you personally feel as you were in the position of having to follow in the footsteps of these guys who had obviously left an incredible imprint on this program?
There was so much pressure. I'm not gonna lie to you. Just being Aiden's backup last year, and then Aiden and Jabo both going like potential first round if Jabo didn't get hurt, and then just me having I have to be the next guy up. And then I just realized to myself, the pressure is there really shouldn't be pressure, because I'm cut from the same cloth as them. I'm beautifully and wonderfully made by the great God that we all serve, and I'm just thankful to be here. And I just knew if I just put in the work that God would take care of the rest.
We were talking as well about the coordinator change, Jesse Minter coming in as the defensive coordinator. I know there's a lot of continuity because they worked with one another previously, but how would you describe his influence on this D at a period of transition personnel-wise?
I think the best thing that Coach Minter did was just let us be us. He didn't put too much on our plate. He let us just go out there and play football, gave us the calls, let us do our job, and then just let us coach each other up, let us go out there and just play physical, fast, and just have fun. And I feel like that's the reason why I feel like we played so well and that we gelled so well together with him.
Speaking of coaches, Your sister is working as a GA in this program. It was fun to watch her working with the quarterbacks when we were there in preseason camp. What has it been like for you to have her around on a daily basis?
It's been amazing just to see where she started and where she's at now, how she interacts with my teammates, my brothers, how she just conducts her business is amazing. And I feel like it definitely motivated me to step up and be better because I couldn't get embarrassed in front of my sister. So even at practice, conditioning workouts, we had she was there at our conditioning test, and I was struggling the first couple of times. We did it, but I passed because she was watching. I was like, I'm not losing. I can't fail in front of my sister. So it's been a great experience.
Now, give me a sense of the dynamic there. I mean, she's obviously your older sister. Do you call her coach when you're around the team? I mean, like, kind of what's that interpersonal relationship like when you're in those team settings?
I give her as much respect as possible, and then I just can't bring myself to call her coach. You know, we've been battling since we were in diapers. Anything we could compete in, we were competing in. So I just can't bring myself to call her coach. But she's coached everybody else.
Fair enough. I'm sure if the roles were reversed, she would feel the exact same way. So I get it.
Absolutely.
Give us a sense for the vibe around the team this week after beating Ohio State for the second straight year and heading into the Big Ten championship game.
It's been the same as it's always been. You know, we have high spirits, high motivation, but we're not stopping. I'm sure everyone is expecting us that, oh, we beat Ohio State, that we're going to take Purdue very lightly, and we're not. We're not. We're just as locked in as we were week one. We're just as locked in as we were when we went 2-4. So I feel like we are still maintaining that underdog mentality because we know when we lose that everyone's going to hate us again. So we're just keep constantly remembering where we were and trying to get to where we need to be.
You have been banged up. You've played sparingly here lately. Update us on your physical condition.
I'm doing a lot better. You know, I'm still trying to get back to full just being out there with my brothers, and it's been so hard just to see them out there, just grinding without me, seeing them out there just fight without me, and it's been hard, but they've been holding it down, and I promise when I come back that I'm gonna hold them down too.
What's the scouting report against Purdue?
There are a lot of drop back pass. I love drop back pass, so that's as a defensive end, we love that. You don't really get a lot of drop back pass in the Big Ten. It's a lot of big boys up front trying to run the ball down your throat. So when you get drop back pass as an edge rusher, you have to just smile at it. And definitely looking forward to this game.
We are looking forward to it as well. Mike Morris, congratulations on this award, and we will see you on Saturday in Indianapolis.
Man, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Congratulations as well to Devin Witherspoon, the Tatum Woodson Defensive Back of the Year. Witherspoon's been fabulous, 17 passes defended on the year. That is PBU's plus interceptions, good for second in the conference. Amazingly, the first non-special teams player from Illinois to win an individual award in the conference in 15 years. Rashard Mendenhall, the last to do so. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2007. Here's the second team all-conference defense. These are players who are not named to any of the first teams. You see a couple Hawkeyes up front. Lucas Van Ness, Joe Evans, Cal Halliday of Michigan State, Big Ten leader in tackles on there. How about the true freshman, Abdul Carter of Penn State, third in the conference in sacks. Minnesota's Tyler Nubin, mainstay in their outstanding secondary, tied for third in the conference with 4 picks. Big Ten dropped 2 games last night in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, but still 12 to go. Marquee games tonight include Syracuse at Illinois, Virginia taking on Michigan, Red Hot Purdue and Tallahassee tomorrow. You got Ohio State going to Duke, and Indiana will host North Carolina. Rafael Davis is here to talk some of this through. Let's start with games tonight, Rafael, and let's start with Maryland. They are off to a fabulous start under Kevin Willard. They are playing what, frankly, has been a dreadful Louisville team. Kevin Willard, former Louisville assistant, going back there. So let's focus more on Maryland than the matchup. Maybe for people who haven't watched the Terps to this point, why have they been so good?
They've bought in. They bought in defensively to Coach Willard's style, his hard nose, his toughness, and they're defending at a high level right now across the board. And it starts with Dante Scott. Offensively, he's playing well, averaging around 16 and 8. He's shooting the ball 50% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, and around 90% from the free throw line. So when you have a guy like that that's putting the ball in the basket, but then commits to defend all of the younger guys, such as Akeem Hart, he's playing well, shooting the ball well. He's defending at a high level. Julian Reese has really came on, shooting the ball 80% from the field right now. Throwing it to him in the post is almost a bucket at this point. So all of the marquee guys that return have bought in, and when you have the guys in the locker room, when they buy into a coach's system, there's no other player that can deny it.
Yeah, he has really stood out to me. Julian Reese, highly touted kid who was kind of a bit player last year, but you're really beginning to understand why. And again, this is a Louisville team that's 0-6. They have some dreadful losses under first-year coach Kenny Payne. Speaking of teams with bad losses, Syracuse travels to Champaign tonight. They have lost to Colgate. They have lost to Bryant. So again, it feels like a little bit of a mismatch. I think Illinois is an incredible story. They are so much fun to watch. They do have the one loss this year to Virginia, and we'll get to them here in just a bit. But what do you make of the Illini at this point?
I think their defense is a little bit ahead of their offense at this point. You think about they're allowing teams to shoot 41% from the field, which is one of the better defenses in the conference. But then they're also scoring the ball as well with Terrence Shannon leading the way, averaging around 20 points, 5 assists, leading his team in both of those categories. And then he's getting the job done very efficiently. But with this Illinois team, as you go further and further into the Big Ten season, I do wonder about their rebounding, their inside depth. I don't know if Coleman Hawkins can be a guy you play at the 5 against the Purdue or Michigan and Hunter Dickinson. So I'm curious there, but this Illinois team with their length and their physicality on the defensive end, it's tough to score against them.
Dane Tange has been a nice revelation for them inside. I think what's so cool is just how differently they're playing than a year ago, right? They're 179th in the nation in tempo. They're 11th in the nation in tempo this season. They really get up and down and a fun team. I mentioned they lost to Virginia. Michigan hosts the Cavaliers tonight. Virginia's really good. I mean, they have probably exceeded where a lot of people thought they would be this year. Where are you on Michigan? I went to overtime against Ohio U. It's been a little bit up and down for them to this point. They clearly have a great player in Hunter Dickinson. What do you make of the Wolverines?
Yeah, I called that game against Ohio up in Ann Arbor.
You did a very good job on it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's a thing where those guards, you think of Jalen Llewellyn, Kobe Buffkin, it's one thing to not make shots. They're shooting 15% from 3 right now, but it's another thing to let your missing shots and not making a shot affect your defense. And they're not pressuring the basketball on the perimeter. They're not up on guys. The post feeds are a little too easy. And now they're playing a Virginia team with some may consider the best backcourt in the ACC. So those two guards are going to really have to step their game up. Jet Howard has been unbelievable as a freshman, but he needs some help in that backcourt. And then even with Hunter Dickinson, you look at that Ohio game down the stretch, he's got to demand the ball a little bit more. I'm not a fan of Hunter Dickinson shooting the ball 8 to 12 times a game. I think he should be somewhere in that 15 to 20 range, depending on how the flow of the game is going, and really run your offense through him.
It'll be interesting to watch Virginia tonight. You talked about the backcourt. Armand Franklin, transfer from Indiana, has been really good for them. And again, an incredibly well-coached team with Tony Bennett. So that should be an interesting matchup. As for tomorrow, Purdue had a fabulous weekend. I mean, they didn't just beat Gonzaga and Duke. They beat up Gonzaga and Duke. They are, if there is one team that I think has most exceeded what the rest of the nation expected from them to this point, it is probably Purdue. So what do you make of the Boilermakers taking on a Florida State team that frankly doesn't look very good? They got pounded by Nebraska this weekend. Where are you with Purdue?
Well, you want to come and actually play the game. You don't want to look at who you're playing and come in and look at their record and say this is going to be an easy one. We just got 2 big wins. So they got to play the game. But then when you have big fella Zach Edey shooting the ball 60, 70% from the field, it's automatic 2 points or he's getting to the free throw line. And then Braden Smith, the energy and the effort and the tangibles he's brought to this team, whether he's scoring the ball at a high level or he's rebounding the ball, getting the ball where it needs to go. Fletcher Lawyer's playing well as a freshman. I think this is one of Coach Painter's better team, not talent-wise, but they listen well, they play hard, they rebound, and all of them play within themselves. They don't step out of their lanes, and then they just have a great locker room. And this team is speaking to how important the locker room is, and it's showing on the floor.
Their freshmen are great. And Edey, it was funny. I don't know if you saw the quote from Drew Timme, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but it was something to the effect of, he gets the ball inside, and there's nothing you can do. You just hope he misses.
Yeah, you just hope he misses. He's going to go over top of you. And he's almost.
Yeah, and that's one of the best big men in the country.
Yeah.
Drew Timme, right? It is really something. Okay, what about Ohio State and Duke?
Yeah.
These are two teams, I think, that we've seen some really high-end play from them, and we've also seen some moments where you say, hey, they're still kind of putting it together. What do you think about this matchup? This is one where I think the matchup is really intriguing.
Yeah, you look at Duke, and you know they're going to want to win a game, get that game back, especially not just the game they lost against Purdue, but they lost at Ohio State last season, so they're going to get that one back. Their freshman big man is a stud, averaging around 15 and 10, so Zed Key is going to have his hands full. But the way Justice Sewing came on late in their last game, scored 15 straight. You watch that game back, and from the 11-minute mark to the 1-minute mark, no other Buckeye scored a field goal. Wow. He put the team on his back and really carried them through. And in other games, you've seen Bruce Thornton have 17. You've seen Sitsabal be one of the better freshmen in the conference. But you got to get those guys, Tanner Holden, those upperclassmen, when you go on the road to Duke, those freshmen may be a little tight. So we're going to see how that plays out.
And it'll be interesting to see defensively where they are, because this is a team that certainly in the San Diego State game, I think San Diego State's really good. They got carved up a little bit defensively. But again, both those teams have some question marks, but both teams you could certainly see making a ton of noise here down the way. North Carolina was number one. They are not anymore. They had a really bad week. Lost to Iowa State and Alabama. They nearly lost to Portland. Thoughts on their game against an Indiana team that is relatively untested to this point, but certainly has looked very good to this point.
And they've looked good on defense. This is the second year in a row where Coach Woodson really has those guys guarding at a high level. They're leading the Big Ten in field goal percentage allowed. They have a top 3 scoring defense where you come in at Assembly Hall, you're not going to score too many points. What I would like to see them continue to do is really push the pace, especially if we don't know if TJD is going to play, if he's going to be available. Xavier Johnson, Hood Schifino, they've really got to push the tempo. And Hood Schifino will play better. His percentages aren't that great right now, but he's averaging 5 assists, 5 rebounds. He's doing other things, which is helping the team, but they've got to make shots. They're dead last in the Big Ten in three-pointers made. Miller Kopp is shooting a high percentage, but they just got to make more of them.
I'm guessing this thought has crossed your mind a time or two, but Indiana-Purdue is going to be wild.
Oh, it's going to be crazy.
Those are going to be great
I was thinking yesterday, I don't know the last time where they've both been ranked in the top 10.
I think it's the late 80s.
Yeah, there we go. See, it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
It'll really be something. Hey, what about Michigan State going to Notre Dame? Spartans have played a brutal schedule. Notre Dame just lost to St. Bonaventure. I'm not sure this is one of Mike Brey's better teams, but what do you make of this matchup for the Spartans and kind of where they are with some really good wins in a very challenging slate?
Well, yeah, they're banged up right now with Malik Hall out, Jay Nakins out, and Coach Izzo was so high on Jay Nakins coming into the season, called him what could be their best player. So not having him really hurts. But I look at a guy like Pierre Brooks. The last 2 games, he scored 15 in both of those games, 7 from 15 from the three-point line. With him having extra minutes and being on the floor, having that experience, it just bodes well for this Michigan State team come March. Come when it's time to actually win those games, he has to step into that role. But then you have a guy like Joey Hauser. I like to see Joey Hauser on the floor without a Malik Hall to really build up his confidence and build up just shooting the basketball. Shoot it more, shoot it when you're open. And then Tyson Walker and A.J. Hoggard, they've got to lead the way and not turn the ball over.
It's interesting. I think one of the things we talk about a lot with Tom Izzo teams is that they get better and they develop, and you're really seeing that this year. Mady Sissoko.
Yeah.
I mean, where this
Michigan State fans owe him an apology.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, again, you understand fandom, but Joey Hauser, same thing, right? Gotten better and better. So should be fun to watch this team develop. I cannot wait to spend more time digging into this stuff with you, but this is like a crash course tonight. If you're just tuning in, people who have been watching a lot of football and focusing in on that tonight and tomorrow, you get to watch a ton of Big Ten hoops and some in really intriguing matchups. Raphael, always fun. Thanks, man. Yep. Iowa's Jack Campbell named the Nagurski-Woodson Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Campbell in the top 10 in the nation in tackles after leading in that category a year ago. Key cog for an Iowa defense that ranks in the top 6 nationally in total D and scoring D. He's the 3rd Iowa player to capture this award in the last 6 seasons. Jack Campbell joining us now. He is today's big interview. And Jack, congratulations. What was your reaction when you heard you had won this award?
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Initial reaction was just giving credit and thanks to where it's due. That's all my teammates and my coaches, just putting all that time and effort into building me into the player that I am today. There's still so many ways you can improve, and there's so many guys out there that I feel like are deserving of this award. But at the end of the day, man, I just feel so blessed to be in the position to receive this. And I feel so thankful to just be around these guys in this building day in and day out, and get to be around some of the best coaches in the nation. So overall, man, I'm just thankful.
We cannot say we did not see this coming. You were the preseason Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and then you end up winning the award at the end of the year. To what extent did you feel pressure with that label on you from the outset?
Yeah, no, 100%. I just try to focus on what I can control. At the start of the season, there's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of people predicting things, and a lot of times they honestly don't come true. There's a lot of surprises, a lot of guys that show up. But I just knew if I just stuck to my guns, do what I do day in and day out, and just focus on the little things, that the cumulative effect would just turn into maybe something that these people predicted. But the whole time I was just focused on the Iowa defense and my team. But ultimately, it's just little things over time that lead to big results. And that was my main focus just throughout the season. And again, I'm just so blessed to be in the position to win this award. So
let's talk about that team a little bit. I know it's been a disappointing week for you. You had a chance to win the West. It kind of slipped through your fingers. Take us through the emotions of the last couple of days.
Yeah, 100%. It's been tough for everyone in the facility, but just those guys who was their last time running out at Kinnick last year, getting to put on the black and gold. It's never easy, but again, we're not going to hang our heads. We're not going to pout and complain. We're just going to put our heads down and get right back to work. I'm just proud of the guys on both sides of the ball. For all the effort and work they put in throughout the season. And now we have the opportunity to go to a bowl game and compete in that. So just what an opportunity we have in front of us. But we just need to keep this thing moving forward and just continue to focus on what really matters. So
it is amazing to me that Phil Parker does not get more recognition nationally. For the life of me, I can't figure it out, Jack. Give people a sense of what makes him so great, because Iowa, year in and year out, is among the elite nationally defensively.
Yeah, quite frankly, I can't figure out either. The amount of the defensive back of the year award. You walk into their position room and all the guys on the back wall and all the accomplishments that they've created. Like you've said, the defense always ranks usually in the top 5 in about every category. So I really don't know. But you got guys the proof's in the pudding, and I feel like you got guys that go out and play at a high level week in and week out. And all the credit can't be on the players. It's got to be on the guys that the supporting cast that support them, put them in the position to make plays. Coach Parker does a tremendous job. Year in and year out, and it never changes. And that's something that I'd take to the bank, is that Iowa's always going to have a great defense, no matter the circumstances, if that guy's at the defensive coordinator position. So,
Jack, one last question. I want to ask you a little bit about your accomplishments off the field. You are a finalist for the Campbell Trophy, which is essentially the academic Heisman. It seems to me that as a tiebreaker, it should go to a guy named Campbell, if that is at all a possibility. So it feels like you would be in the pole position there. But tell me a little bit about enterprise leadership as a major, what that's about, and what your studies have meant to you at Iowa.
Yeah, no, 100%. When I got here, I didn't really know what I wanted to study, so I came in undecided. And then through a couple of teammates, I found out that enterprise leadership, it's just a general business degree. Through the university. And again, it's not like you got to be a wizard to do it. It's just really applicable stuff that you can take into like being a small business owner and stuff like that. But honestly, like what I just try to focus on is doing the little things A lot of guys, just the importance of going to class and paying attention and asking questions. That's kind of what I guess I focused on. But I also wanted to get something out of all the classes that I went to and learn and take away something and not waste my time and go sit there and just let it go in one ear and out the other. So I would just say with my degree, it's just probably very versatile in the real world. And that's something I want because I think throughout my time, I'm going to want to be able to go into different fields and get the opportunity to work there. So overall, I think that's kind of what my degree is about, and kind of my approach I took to academics is just doing those small things and just trying to do my best in every single class. So.
Sounds a little bit like your approach on the field as well, and apparently it has served you well on both fronts. Jack Campbell, congratulations on winning this award. Best of luck in your bowl game, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Let's take a look at the third team all-conference defense. You get a sense for how deep the league is when you look at some of the names on here. I mean, there's some great players. Keith Randolph, he tied for second in the Big Ten with 13 tackles for loss. Mike Hall had some big moments up front for the Buckeyes. Jair Brown leads Penn State in tackles and picks, had a fumble return TD. Kalen King is tied for the national lead in passes broken up. Congratulations to all of the players named here. Specialist awards, Jake Moody, the Big Ten Kicker of the Year for the second straight season. Fourth player to win this award twice. He won the Groza Award as the nation's top kicker last season. Moody made 26 of his 32 field goal attempts to this point. Bryce Behringer of Michigan State is the Edelman Fields Punter of the Year. Former walk-on turned into a great story. He is the national leader by more than 2 yards per punt, averaging a staggering 49 yards per boot. He's the first Michigan State specialist ever to win a Big Ten award. And Indiana speedster Jalen Lucas, the Rogers Dwight Return Specialist of the Year. Lucas, the only player in the nation with 2 kickoff return TDs this season. He's second nationally in kick return average for those with at least 20 returns. To summarize, these are the individual award winners, Campbell, Morris, and Witherspoon joining those three, with Jim Harbaugh, the Coach of the Year. Congratulations to all who won awards and made the all-conference teams today. Really an incredible honor. As for these individuals, who could have ever seen this coming? What about the linebacker spot?
I got to go with Jack Campbell. He's a guy that's dependable. I don't know a linebacker out there that if you put him in the game that you could count on making more plays consistently than Jack.
Okay, Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm going to go with Mike Morris, and I'll tell you why, because I just think that he has been the most consistent one, and he would be the guy I picked just because defense is a team game. And Michigan's team defense is playing outstanding, and Mike has numbers to back it up.
Okay, how about Coach of the Year?
I went with Jim Harbaugh. How he has managed all this and to be in the position they're at right now, I mean, phenomenal job in my point. Yes, Jim, I got you.
Okay, so you had a little flip-flopped with, Campbell was the Defensive Player of the Year, Morris the Lineman of the Year, but still, you got the individuals right.
Are you surprised?
No, I'm not the least bit surprised. You were a shrewd judge of talent.
That was about 2 months ago, just for our viewers.
I think we should tell them how we make TV, though. Wani got all the first picks when it came down to the awards. The producers called him first and said, Wani, which guys do you want? And then I had to do cleanup.
Oh, you took 3 guys from Ohio State.
I did.
Why don't you just shake the man's hand for a job well done?
It's been a long week for him. That's why.
He's an angry man.
Yeah.
Let's get to our big stat. It is the CFP rankings, which are coming out tonight. Some interesting nuggets as we head down the stretch here. 13 different programs have made the CFP. TCU, USC, both in position to add to that total if things were to fall their way. We've never had a 2-loss team make it. And an important note here for Ohio State. 2 one-loss Power 5 teams have gotten in despite missing their conference title game. The Buckeyes and Alabama. Ohio State obviously hoping to replicate that this year. They will need some help. To me, the biggest thing you have to look for tonight is where does Ohio State stand relative to Alabama? If Ohio State is number 5 and Alabama is number 6, then there is no reason to believe that were USC to lose, that Ohio State couldn't get in. You agree that that's the That's the biggest inflection point?
I agree. I mean, that's what everybody's going to be looking at if you're somebody who supports Ohio State, somebody who supports Alabama, is where they fall. Alabama with 2 losses on the season, Ohio State with just 1, and you kind of start to go through the resumes here, and you can make an argument for Alabama that they could be an undefeated team right now because they lost 2 close ones. They were playing away, the whole deal. You can also make an argument that they could be a 4-loss team because there were 2 other games that they played that were really close that they were on the winning end of. Ohio State with the 1 loss that's extremely fresh, got blown out on their home field. That's going to stick in the minds of the committee. Then you start to go through wins. Alabama's best win's probably going to be Texas. Ohio State owns a win over Penn State and over Notre Dame. So to me, it seems pretty clear at where these teams should fall, but we don't know how the committee is going to look at some of the other metrics that we don't have readily available, and that's going to be the biggest thing to look out for.
Yeah, I think that the wins, the quality wins, you just mentioned it. I mean, Ohio State's better than what Alabama is. I look for Ohio State to be 5th. I look for USC to get beat and Ohio State to get in the playoffs. Coach, I've been doing my homework now. Utah, Cowboys, they are first. It's kind of like a Michigan-Ohio State game, this Pac-12 game. I'm serious now. I mean, the most balanced team in the Pac-12 is Utah. Running it, they're 1 in defense, 1 in scoring, 3rd in sacks. They're 2nd in rushing the football. They are the physical team in this game. I look for them to win this game and Ohio State to be 5th and get in.
The hardest thing, though, is that they played earlier in the season and Utah won it. It's so hard to beat a team twice in 1 year.
I agree.
And that's the thing that I'm going to be looking at because this USC team has evolved. Now, the biggest thing there is they're a team that's predicated on takeaways. Their turnover margin is best in the country. They've capitalized with points off of the takeaways. So if Utah can protect the football, it takes chances away from the offense. They can sustain drives. That'll be big to look there. The one talking point that I think is unique is if TCU could lose in their conference championship game and they're still guaranteed a spot. Because there's this thought that Michigan's in regardless of what happens over the weekend.
I think
there's
so.
A thought that
I think
Georgia's
in too. Yep.
Regardless of what happens. But do they value a TCU team that has won games, but the games haven't always been pretty if they lose this weekend? That's another thing to kind of sit there and look at.
An interesting sidebar, the quarterback at Utah, Cam Rising, he came out, he was a highly recruited kid, thought he had an offer, he did initially, to Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. Lincoln pulls the scholarship, he goes to Texas, and then he transfers to Utah. He says he can't wait to see our man Lincoln Riley again. I don't know. Does that mean anything? I think it does.
Might mean a little something.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how all this plays out. I agree with you. I think the TCU thing, I think it might depend on how much they were to lose by.
Sure.
Were they to lose? But I think people have been counting on TCU losing for a few weeks now.
Yeah, and it hasn't happened.
They have not cooperated. Give them a ton of credit. They've been really good. But there's still some wheels in motion here. Some things that could get Ohio State in, no question.
Let me ask you something. Any chance that Michigan, either one of you guys, is number 1?
Yes.
Ahead of Georgia?
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, they have the best win.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hey, I do want to get to the coaches, so I'm gonna cut off that conversation and talk about the new coaches. Starting with Matt Rule in Lincoln yesterday. What do you make of the new Husker coach?
I know Matt well from when he, obviously a Penn State guy, and then when he was the head coach at Temple, I was at Pitt, so we were clinics together and stuff. And this is his type of program. He's the rebuilding guy, right? He's going to go in just like he did at Temple, just like he did at Baylor. We know all the stories. And his staff, the one thing, and it might have been a negative for him. The one thing he did when he went to the Carolina Panthers from Baylor, he took his defensive coordinators. He brought a lot of coaches with him from Baylor, and I don't know if that was the best thing in the NFL at that time, but guess what? Those guys are still with them, and it's going to be an easy transition out to Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back and you talked about Baylor, but they went from 1-11 to a national power. And you look at Temple, he had guys that were NFL draft picks ready to go. And some of those guys still playing in the NFL right now, some really good players. So the rebuild aspect of it, I think, is the most important thing. You need a guy there who can embrace the rebuild, but also embrace the expectations of Nebraska.
I want to talk a little bit about Wisconsin as well. Luke Fickell, someone you know very well. He was your defensive coordinator when you were in college. There had been, I think, an assumption out there that they were not going to go outside and were going to give this to Jim Leonhard. Instead, they go out and get a guy who was the National Coach of the Year a year ago, who has done an incredible job Give us a sense of what Wisconsin is getting in Luke Fickell.
He's a wonderful football coach, but he's an even better person. I can say, like, Urban Meyer was a tough coach. If Luke Fickell wasn't that guy who was coaching linebackers and calling the defense, I don't know if I would have made it, because he's the guy that you can go to when you have a legitimate issue, and he can help you through it. And the one story I'll tell about Coach Fickell is when I left the game of football in 2018, he was one of the first people that called me, and he said, I don't know what your future holds and what your professional plans are, but if you need something to do, we'll find a spot for you at Cincinnati. And so that's the type of person that they're going to get. Not only somebody who is a great football coach, but somebody who's a great man who's really invested in his players, current and former, and that's important.
Yeah, the thing that jumps at me, we all know the talent. Cincinnati gets good talent, but they don't get Wisconsin talent or Ohio State talent, right? He has developed players to compete with the Ohio States and the Wisconsin.
He had 9 players drafted.
Some of those guys balling right now, too.
That's incredible. So he knows the old transfer portal. Yep. He knows all the loopholes, what people are doing. That's a great hire.
Well, it should be great. And again, you get Cincinnati and the CFP. It's clear what the mission is in Madison is to get the Badgers there as well. All Big Ten offensive players revealed tomorrow. Some more individual awards as well. See you then.